Hey guys, this is Just One Guy, and I'm back here with the next video. And so if you watched my last video, you know that I'm trying to start my own video game company. And one of the things I noticed is that when you're making a game, or each time you make it, you tend to write a lot of code over and over again. Now you're probably looking at this on screen, but I have to look up to see my actual screen. But what I'm going to show you now is the first thing I want to do. And the first thing I want to do is solve this situation on writing code over and over again. So what I'm doing right now is writing a base game engine on top of the Unity game engine. That way I won't need to write the code over and over again. So let me just show you that. If we go into Unity right here, let me just see. You can see that all the code that I feel like I'm going to need to write over and over again is basically right here. And when I thought about it, it turned out to be a lot, because one of the main things that always takes a long time to get down is UI code. And that's because it's going to be different for each game, but there's a lot of things that's always the same. And you're always going to have stuff like the inventory and the UI buttons and stuff like that. And so what I wanted to do was just write that all down now, so when I actually start making games, it'll make the game creation process a lot quicker. So that was the first thing I started with, but then I moved on to everything else I was going to need. So let me just show you in a minute. And now we're here in Google Docs. Before, somebody asked me why did I use Google Docs to track down and keep track of everything in game development. And the reason is really simple. It's because you can open Google Docs on your PC and your phone, and it's pretty seamless. You can edit both of them at the same time. So anything you want to write in Google Docs is pretty easy to use. And Google Docs is integrated into the Google Assistant. So it just integrates into everything really smoothly, and it's easy to use, and you can access it from anywhere. So anytime you have an idea or you're planning to write down something, you can just open up your phone and write it down in Google Docs. And then when you get home and you're on a PC, you can actually just look it up, and it's just very easy and simple to deal with. But here's what I'm currently working on, which is some of the equip code out for the inventory that I wrote before. So I'm trying to get that done, because there can be a lot of problems with any type of game where you have an equipment system where you can create duplicates and stuff like that. And so that's always going to be the most complicated thing when you're dealing with items. I got most of it done, and I'll show it to you in a minute, but I just had some problems which I had to go back and fix it, because one of the things that I did wrong was I messed up some of the equip code, and so you could unequip an item and create like 10,000 of them. So it was really annoying, but I fixed most of that, and now I'm just trying to get it to a usable state. What I want to do is basically create an equipment system that I can import into any game, and it just works without any extra coding, and I'm pretty much done with that. The next thing I want to do is get an Android input, because I like to make a lot of games for Android, because I feel like if you can whip out your phone and just play the game instantly, that it'll just be accessible to a lot more players than just making it for PC. Because with a PC, you have to, when you want to play the game, you have to sit there and you have to be ready to play the game. Whereas with a phone, you can just whip out your phone at any time and start playing the game right there. Of course, the problem with Android games is most of them just want to make a lot of money, so they try to charge you and nickel and dime you for every little thing. But what's interesting is, the more I'm getting into the indie scene, I've seen a lot of indie games that actually do a lot of interesting things, a lot of new mechanics that you don't see in AAA games, which I'm going to go to in another video when I talk about indie games versus AAA games, because it's interesting how indie games innovate so much and give you so many features, and AAA games take away so many features but charge you so much more money. Like I've been watching this guy called Splattercat, and I've been watching his channel, and I bought a lot of the indie games because of his channel, and they were a lot deeper, and I tend to play them a lot longer because they just had so much more mechanics and they were so much more interesting than when you go into a AAA game, which is basically the same thing and it costs more. But I don't want to go into that in this video right now. I just want to give an update on what I'm doing. I'll go into that indie games versus AAA and a little while later. But the next thing I wanted to work on was the movement class and basically the character class, because even though you can have dramatically different games, the basis of movement is always the same on what they're going to need. Well, the character class, the movement can obviously be different, but the basis on the character class is always the same, because you're always going to have health, damage, levels, stats and stuff like that. All that's going to be the same across most games. And what I found is I can just write that code now and get it out of the way easy. And then when I'm creating games in the future, I'll just already have that code written to where I don't have to do it over and over and over again. And this was something I gained from my experience in making games over the last 5 years, and basically just writing this stuff over and over and over again. Like I've written this health bar code like 1,000 times, but I never thought just to put it into a class and use it as reusable code. But now I'm doing that now, since I'm trying to start a video game company. That way I can produce the games a lot faster. And I feel like that's one of the problems with indie developers, because you try to develop a lot of games, but as an indie developer, you're only one person, so you'll never be able to develop games as fast as a AAA studio. But AAA studios also do stuff like this from what I've seen, and that's how they're able to basically produce yearly releases. But unlike AAA games, I won't skimp on the features. This is just the basis of what's going to be in every game. Next, I wanted to go into like some of the AI classes, because I noticed I was writing that code over again. And although the movement is the same, it's different for each game with the AI, the mechanics behind the AI class is always generally the same. And I'll go into that into another video, because that's more of a deeper subject. The sound system, of course, that's going to be the same for every game, and I didn't feel like writing a music manager over and over and over again, so I'm just going to write it once in this system, and then I'll use it for every single game. The UI system, previously when I was making games, I found that the UI system took me the longest, and that's because of the way Unity's UI system is set up. No matter which system you use, it's always long and it's always excruciating to set up the UI, just because of the nature of how it is. Because one of the things about UI is if you get it wrong, it's one of the things that could really mess up your game, because aside from controlling the player character, the player is always going to be interacting with your UI. So you want to get it right, because if you get it wrong, then that's going to be the one thing that they're going to be annoyed about each time they open up the UI menu. So you want it to be simple, easy to understand, and you want to develop it for the system that you're working on. Like one thing I see indie developers get wrong a lot is they try to use the same UI for mobile, console, and Android, mobile, console, and PC, which just creates a bad experience, because mobile has different controls. You touch everything on mobile, so you're just used to touching things, while PC has a mouse. So you can get some overlap there, but everything on mobile needs to be bigger, whereas on PC everything needs to be smaller because you have more screen real estate. And on console you need to develop a completely different system, because everything needs to be simple to navigate through. And since you don't have the mouse and you're using a keypad, you're going to have to put up a whole new UI. And this was a lot of things that I see that a lot of indie developers get wrong. So I want to do it now, that way I just have a system in place and I have to deal with the UI minimally. The camera system, the deal with that is, I wrote a lot of camera code in the past, but Unity has upgraded their engine to make some of this easier and some of it more complicated. So I want to write down the camera system now, because some things are always going to be the same, like the follow an object, a camera manager, and cutscenes like that. But I don't know how well Unity's new system will deal with it, but I'm going to try to use that because it looked a lot easier. In the past, I always just wrote my own camera code and my own camera system, just because it tended when you write a camera system, you don't want to use somebody else's, because there's always some little stuff that you need the camera to do that you want to just be able to go in and do yourself. So I always tended to write my own camera, and the camera will tend to work differently. You need it to work differently based on which system you're using too, because you want the camera to work different if you're using Android versus if you are using something like PC. And I'll go over all these subjects in more detail in other videos, but it suffices to say I just always prefer to use my own camera code rather than anything Unity had. And also, when you use Unity assets, the way they tend to write their codes tends to be complicated and not beginner friendly. Like, they'll use a lot of shortcuts and stuff like that, so when you're trying to look through the code to figure out what the code is doing, it's complicated to understand and decode what Unity is wrote, because the way they wrote their code is not really beginner friendly. It's just advanced, and it uses like 3 or 4 different Unity systems. Like, I tried to decode their movement third person code, and some of it uses the rigid body physics system, some of it uses just the transform move system, and then some of it uses the animation system. So it's just best not to use Unity systems, because their systems are so tied into their engine and so complicated that it's going to be really hard to understand them. And if you do understand them, you're just not going to go with that system, because they're using so many different systems. Like, generally in a movement system, you either want to stick to either rigid body physics or transform move, just because your game might be physics based or not. So Unity using both, it's just good for an example, but it's not really good to use in a game. Next is the animation system, because a bit of an interruption there, but let's keep going. The animation system, I want to develop my own animation system to where I could just transport the character to any game and they just work. Because Unity does have a good animation system, but you tend to have to set it up each and every game differently, and it's just a lot of code and stuff that could be really simplified that could be used across the game. So next is my emotional system. This is more of a conversation system where the character has emotions, and based on like how you're dealing with the character, it controls how they feel. A lot of my games will require this, so I figure I'd just get it out of the way right now, because I wrote it over and over again, but I never really just wrote it as a class, and that'll go more into the AI system. And I'll talk about more of each one of these in a separate video, because it's a lot deeper and it's a lot more interesting if I do it that way rather than just this whole video. Next is the AI system, which I explained before. Just a few things I want to put in the game engine, and then the input system. Unity, I think, has switched the input system at least 3 times since I started using the game engine, and I just find it's best just to go with the old one. I don't like the new input system because it seems complicated. They say it's better, but what I found is when Unity finds something better, they mean better for professional game developers. And for simple game developers, it's just best to use the system they already have. And I'll go into that when I talk about the problems with using the Unity game engine. And because Unity, for some reason, thinks their game engine is for professional game developers, where it's mostly indie game developers that use it. So it always feels like they over-engineer their systems for stuff that people are never going to use it for. And last, a conversation system, which I figure every game is going to need, because I want to actually put voice acting into my games, but just in case, it's always best to have a text-based conversational system. Now I'm just going to go into Unity and show you what I've got done so far. Okay, now I'm here in Unity, and you can see I've actually got a lot of stuff done, because I meant to shoot this video on week 1 when I started, but I've just been working on it basically every day. And what I started doing now is I use Google Chrome to remotely access my PC, and I just work on small stuff when I'm at work. So right here we have this UI, and what I did right here was try to get the item system done, because I know I'm going to need item systems for each and every one of the games I make. So let me just show you what I've got done so far. Right here we have our inventory system. First up we have the equipment menu, and I've got the item system and the tooltips. Basically anything you would expect from a normal game here, I've got it working. And so all this works, and I'll be able to transport it to each and every game I want to, so I'll never have to write this inventory code again. Now what's interesting about this inventory code is you'll never need to find any menus or nothing like that, because it's designed to search for it and then tell you what to name the menus if it can't find it. I also this week was adding drag and drop. So I like this system right here, so you can just drag and equip it, and then if you don't want it, you put it back. But the funny thing is, I actually ran into a little bug where when I drag it, because you see it say silver legs, don't mind the picture, it is one of the things I have to fix. I just use temporary pictures just to get the system working. But when I first designed this system, it was interesting because you can click anywhere, as you can see, any one of these boxes, and the item will automatically just go to where it needs to go. Since it's the legs, it's automatically gonna go to the leg slot. And at first I considered that an error, because I thought that was wrong. But then as I moved with the system more, I thought I should leave it, just because it made it impossible for you to try to equip anything in the wrong area. So I decided to just leave it in. Another error that I was going to remove was when you drag something right here, as soon as you hit it, it automatically puts it back in inventory. And I was going to make it you had to click down, but it just turned out to be so much easier just to move it over like this and get rid of it. Sorry for the noise in the background. There seems to be an alarm going off, and I'm just going to ignore it for now. So that's basically what I was doing this week. And before I had designed this and I had to get everything done, but I did it a little bit wrong. So this week I basically got it right. The only thing I have to do now is to fix the items. But since I got the alarm going off in the background and there's a lot more to explain here, I'm just going to explain the rest of it in later videos. That's it for today. Thank you for watching, and please like and support the channel. It's important to me if you watch the videos and you support me through it, because at the end I'll eventually hope to build my own company and sell video games. And I don't want to do it like the AAA studios. I want to make video games where they don't charge you an arm and a leg, and that give you feature-rich games. Basically, I feel like if you pay money, then you should get a complete game. And so that's what I strive to hope for and to make with my company. It's just an honest company that makes games and sells you the game without charging you an arm and a leg. And in a later video, I'll go into why I believe that, because I actually had a bad experience when they first started charging for games. And charging for like DLC and microtransactions, and it ruined one of my favorite games. And from that point on, I never liked that system, and I always wanted them to get rid of it, because I feel like if you go to the store and buy a game, then you should just own that game. But that's a topic for a different video, and this is already getting too long, so I'll go into that later. That's it for today. Thank you for watching.